Hello friends, welcome to my Wrath of the Lich King Classic Season 5 Shadow Priest PvP guide. It looks like Skillcapped has forgotten about Shadow Priests, so I'm here to remedy the situation. However, before we get started, I would like to give a big, juicy, tasty shout out to the Shadow Priest Classic Discord. And this is like a suggestion I would give to anyone that plays any class, any spec. Just seek out your classic, class-specific and spec-specific Discord. There's a bunch of mathematicians in here. You have everything. You know, you got guides on PvP, PvE, stuff for new players. People have spent literally the last 15 years completely solving the game. You have spreadsheets, breakpoints, haste breakpoints, a lot of stuff for PvE, a lot of stuff for PvP, a bunch of rank 1s, a bunch of rank 1 parsers. And with that being said, let's start our little guide here and we're gonna talk about races. And it's gonna come as no crazy surprise to anyone that human is by far the best race for PvP in Season 5, 6, 7 and 8, especially in the later seasons actually. Right now in Season 5, the trinkets we get from PvE aren't that insane, but damage is very high, so it kind of makes up for that. But especially in the later seasons, once we get the Solace of the Defeated from Trial of the Crusader, or especially Bauble in ICC and other trinkets, you're gonna see quite a substantial difference between playing a human and playing any other race. Now for Horde, I would say the best is definitely Troll, not only because of their active ability Berserking, which gives you a mini Bloodlust every 3 minutes, which you can use on your goes to just do more damage in a shorter amount of time in your short burst windows, but you can also just combine it with actual Bloodlust, like in 3s, and just load everyone with dots straight away. And not only because of Berserking, but because also of the Voodoo Shuffle. It's kind of a bug right now in Wrath of the Lich King. What the Voodoo Shuffle does is a passive where movement impairing effects last 15% lower on the Troll. And if you guys didn't know this, Mindflay does count as a movement impairing effect because it does slow people. So even in retail and in all versions of the game, if you have something that reduces CC duration, Mindflay will essentially just cast faster and do more damage. So if you right now, if you Mindflay a Troll, it's gonna... The last tick of Mindflay happens before the cast is actually over, and essentially it makes Mindflay do damage faster, okay? Against Trolls. But there is a bug in the game right now where if you are a Troll Shadow Priest and you Mindflay someone, the Voodoo Shuffle somehow makes your Mindflay faster anyway, and the same bug applies if you're using the Snare Reduction Meta Gem, so you can stack that with Troll and get an even faster Mindflay, which is apparently the way to go right now for PvE. I don't think you need that Meta Gem for PvP necessarily because you have better options, but yeah, like this is another example of how insane the Shadow Priest Discord is. They found out this little bug, so Troll is the best. I would say second after Troll is probably Blood Elf, with Undead being the last, although it's not a big difference between them. But Blood Elf, you can kind of combo your goes a little bit better with the Blood Elf Silence, as well as having an extra 2% chance to resist spells. So I think Blood Elf is second best, and then Undead is kind of like the bottom tier. But Undead looks sick, and I know most people playing Priest are Undead because of, you know, the juicy RP. I'm an Undead, I'm gonna stay Undead, it sucks, it is what it is, you know, it's not that big of a deal, it's gonna be fine. Now let's talk about talents. So for talents, you kind of have these almost mandatory talent points that you always pick no matter what kind of variation of spec you want to go. And then you have a few extra talents that you can choose based on the gear you have, the gear you want to go, the team comp you're playing, if you're playing 3s or 5s or 2s, or if you're playing with a rogue, if you're playing with a mage. There's a little bit of variation there on your playstyle as well. So you can juggle a little bit with talents, but for the most part, it's not gonna change too much. And I found this really good document made by Kate, again on the Shadow Priest Discord. I'm gonna have a link down in the description for both the Discord and this document, as well as Weakauras and everything else we're gonna be talking about in a second. Kate says you can play as a Shadow Nuker, Shadow Support, or Shadow Defender. And you have a little gear set for all of them here. I believe they are as human. Yeah, they are as human. So, you know, if you're not a human, you probably want to go for an actual medallion. Here's a cool way to actually plan out your own gear. If you didn't know, you can like click one of these, for instance, and then you can go copy, And I already have some characters on this website, but if you don't have one, you just do a new character and you can, you know, give it a name, you copy it, and bam. And then you can just change whatever you want. So for instance, I'm an undead, so I need, I know I need a medallion. There's a medallion. So I would probably play, if I was to play the crit spec, like the Shadow Nuker, I would probably play something like this. And, you know, get like a solid 15% crit before Berserker actually activates. So maybe like 17%, maybe 18% crit. You know, you can change some gems and everything like that. But basically, I did try all of these. I farmed all the sets, everything. I have full crit set, full spirit head set, and full haste set. I have literally everything. And this is based on personal experience now, and also things I've seen on the Discord and in other guides. Trust me, it's the best to go full Mooncloth, full spirit, okay? Crit is kind of nice when you get the crits, and you don't really get the crits, because even with playing with a Boomkin in my team that gives me 5% more, I end up with like 27-ish crit chance on my dots, and then people with like around 1k resilience make that go down to like 15. And the crit damage is not that crazy, again, because of resilience. So I tried crit, it doesn't seem good. It might be good for 5s. I haven't tried it in 5s yet because I farmed all the gear in one day. Yes, I farmed all the off pieces in one day. It's bad. I'm a little bit addicted. But basically what I'm trying to say is, based on my personal experience, playing the Mooncloth set is the best. And the way I play it, this is what I found to be the best spec as well. We're gonna go 5 points into Darkness. We're gonna go 3 points into Shadow Focus. It gives you 3% chance for your spells, for your shadow spells to hit. This is good against rogues because rogues have an extra 4% chance to resist spells, but it only applies to shadow spells. So the reason why you need 4% hit regardless of having Shadow Focus is you don't want your Dispel to miss. So this is only for shadow spells, so that's why you also get hit from gear. Then we go 2 points into Improve Shadow Word Pain. We get 3 points into Shadow Affinity, which unlike TBC, it also has an amazing application in PvP. It says every time your Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch get dispelled, you get 15% of your base mana back. Base mana is not 15% of total mana, so you still end up losing mana when you apply a dot and it gets dispelled, but at least you get some of it back. We're gonna go 2 points into Improve Psychic Scream, 1 point into Mind Flay, Veiled Shadows, Shadow Reach, Shadow Weaving. This is really good for Dispel protection as well, because it gives you 5 stacks essentially for as long as you're pressing buttons. And these get dispelled one by one, so it's really good. You get Silence, you get Vampiric Embrace. Improve Vampiric Embrace is actually really solid. Unlike TBC, it's actually very, very good. We're gonna wanna play Improve Devouring Plague to be able to actually spam Devouring Plague to do damage in your burst windows with Shadow Fiend. Shadow Form, and now you have a little choice. This is a choice number 1 you have to make. You need 4 more points, and you can put them in Improve Mind Blast, Mind Melt, Focused Mind, potentially Shadow Power if you want to go crit, but if you go crit, you have to go like fully commit to Shadow Power and Mind Melt. So I'm talking about Mooncloth. Now I play with a Boomkin and with a Shaman, so it's actually really nice for us to have these 4 points into Improve Mind Blast, not only just because of the healing reduction, but also it's an extra debuff on the target, so like an extra dispel protection in a way. So I go this instead of these two. Mind Melt is kind of like the best value damage wise, but my crit is so low without any crit gear that I feel like I'm going Mind Melt for a 1% chance for my dots to crit. It's super low. So I just go Improve Mind Blast, 4 points there. Then I go Misery. Improve Shadow Form makes your Fade act like as a mini freedom. You press it, you break all the roots and all the slows. So this is really, really good. Also makes you not get pushback as bad when you press Fade. In Shadow Form only though, so keep that in mind. So that's why we don't really need Martyrdom. We're gonna get to that. Vampiric Touch, of course. Pain and Suffering is really, really good. It makes your Mind Flay refresh Shadow Word Pain. So every time, so this is a big thing when you're trying to multi-dot. Ideally, you want to Shadow Word Pain everyone, and then you want to just refresh Shadow Word Pains with Mind Flay because it's way less mana, and you also get the extra damage of Mind Flay. This is kind of like the big skill cap thing, making sure you refresh your Shadow Word Pains right before they expire with the Mind Flay so you don't go We're gonna go Psychic Horror, we're gonna go Twisted Fate, we're gonna get Dispersion, and that's it for the Shadow. Over here, we're gonna go Unbreakable Will. I like Inner Fire, Improve Inner Fire a lot. I like Silence Resolve for the Dispel protection. It's really annoying to me when I press Shadow Word Pain, they press Dispel. I press Shadow Word Pain, they press Dispel. I don't like that, so I go Silence Resolve. Inner Focus is really good. Meditation is a must, especially with all the Spirit gear. In combat, Spirit does nothing, so except for extra damage because of Twisted Fate. But in terms of mana regen, Spirit does nothing in combat. But that's why we pick Meditation, to make 50% of the Spirit we have actually work and regen mana in combat. So without this, Spirit gear is useless. That's why if you have very low Spirit, so like 0 Spirit, this talent does nothing. And then we go improve lesser mana cost of instant spells, which is pretty much like your entire toolkit. And then we have 2 more points to put, and these points people put them, you know, you can go either make Dispel cheaper, you can go mana burn. Generally I just go into improve the power word Fortitude, but again, this is basically you gotta identify your win condition and put the points according to that. For instance, if you were to play with a mage, if I were to play with a mage, maybe I'd go improve mana burn, because a mage can kind of lock down a target a lot with, you know, sheep into mana burn, into sheep into mana burn, sheep mana burn, and then we like Nova mana burn, Blizzard mana burn, you know. But with the Boomkin, we don't have the lockdown, so I can't really go mana burn. So I just go improved fort. So this is my spec. And if you guys want to try different things, like maybe you want to try the crit set, again, I'll have a link to Kate's little document in the description as well. So make sure you check that out. For glyphs, you want to always have Glyph of Dispersion, regardless if it's PvE or PvP. This is by far the best glyph for Shadow Priests in the game, reducing the cooldown of Dispersion by 45 seconds. It's good to regen mana back faster, because Dispersion gives you a lot of mana, and it's also good for the obvious defensive of Dispersion. So always pick this one. And then for the other 2 glyphs, there's a little bit of variation. Usually what I play with is Glyph of Inner Fire to increase my armor. Season 5, like I said, HP pools are kind of low, resilience is a little low, so rogues are a little strong when they ambush. However, ambush also bypasses a lot of armor by default, so it's not as crazy valuable. But it's good against warriors, it's good against DKs and their pets. Another option could be Glyph of Power Word Shield, especially if you play with a 4-set bonus, which we'll get to in a second. It makes your Power Word Shield also heal the target for 20% of the shield's absorption. So this is just like a little extra when you're kind of off healing. It's very good in 2s. I also usually run Glyph of Fade to reduce the cooldown of my Fade by 9 seconds, bringing it down to 15 seconds. So every 15 seconds I can basically get away from people. I have like a mini freedom. It's not exactly a freedom, it just breaks slows. You can get slowed the next global, but you can kind of play on a corner and just press Fade and run around the corner a little bit, and then they can't catch you. It's very useful, I think. Other than that, you can also play Glyph of Scourge Imprisonment, which is very strong against DKs right now. However, usually DKs play with Holy Paladins, and Holy Paladins can just dispel the gargoyle, and then this glyph is almost useless. So I kind of tend to not play with this anymore. I used to play with it in the start, but you know, the higher you go, people actually press dispel, and if they dispel the gargoyle, it's kind of a waste. So now I just kill the gargoyle. And those are kind of all the good major glyphs for Shadow. For minor glyphs, I play Glyph of Fading to reduce the mana cost of Fade by 30% since I press it so often. Glyph of Shackle Undead is the only other, I think, useful one, increasing the range of Shackle by 5 yards in case their gargoyles get spawned super far away. And then the last one you can play Glyph of Fortitude. It's the only one that's actually kind of still good. It's especially good into rogue teams. Because you can do a thing where your partner can get in combat and you can stay super far back and press Prayer of Fortitude, which is the raid-wide buff, and it gets you in combat from across the map, and it's kind of useful to have it cost 50% less mana, because Prayer of Fortitude is like 3000 mana. So it's still expensive to do this get in combat fast trick, but it is still a little bit expensive, but it's probably good with how strong rogues are when they get a solid opener with Sap. I actually don't have Glyph of Fortitude though. I have Glyph of Levitate, because I have really bad bag management, and I like pressing Levitate. I just like jump over things. Just don't judge me, okay? It's RP. I do it for the RP. So, but for PvP, yeah, you probably want Fortitude. For professions, ideally you want jewel crafting and engineering. They're kind of expensive to just get on their own, so good luck with that. But jewel crafting is definitely the best in terms of pure stats, because right now all we have is blue gems, and with jewel crafting you can get the big epic, the 3 epic resilience gems, giving you a lot more resilience. So right now jewel crafting is the best, and engineering is just for the hand-mounted pyro rocket. Right now in season 5, the damage of the pyro rocket doesn't scale with gear, doesn't scale with anything. So it's kind of strong right now in season 5. It can hit for like up to 1.72k, which is kind of a lot, you know, when you do a mind blast into a rocket that's off global and has a super high range. I think it's more than 40 yards into a Shadow or Death. That's a big burst combo. And the Shadow Priest kind of will get to how to play the class essentially, but Shadow does a lot of good raw damage, but the burst damage is also kind of high. So the hand-mounted pyro rockets definitely worth it. Now let's talk about the gear. So as I said, there's essentially 3 ways people you know, figured out that you can play the spec. You can play full crit, you can play full spirit, or you can play kind of a mixture, 2-set for the most resilience possible and get as much haste in there as you can. So you're kind of tanky, kind of supportive. Personally, I found that Mooncloth set is the best, and this is my the perfect gear for the season, I think. If you want to follow it, that's great. If you want to play something different, if you want to play more bursty with satin, that's also fine. There's no real one is a miles better than the other, but with this one, I don't really go I have enough resilience, I'm really tanky, and this is what I got. So we got the Deadly Mooncloth full set. I'm playing with the 21 intellect and chance to restore mana on spellcast meta socket, and as much resilience as possible wherever it's available. We got the deadly neck with hit. Since there's no deadly neck with spirit, we just get hit as much as we can from all these pieces. We get the Mooncloth mantle, the hit cloak with 35 spell penetration. I got the Mooncloth robe plus spirit deadly gladiator's cuffs of salvation. Torch of Holy Fire is by far the best weapon in PvP and PvE for every caster that can wear a mace. There's a sword equivalent for mages and warlocks, but yeah, the Torch of Holy Fire, best in slot for every priest, every moonkin, resto druid, resto shaman, elemental shaman. So good luck getting this. I would not recommend spending arena points on a deadly weapon unless you really don't do any PvE. And if you don't do any PvE, yeah, the resilience, you know, MP5 weapon is probably the best. Not the crit one, but this one, the Deadly Gladiator's Gavel. Although it's kind of a small difference between this one and even normal Nax 25. Maligos 10-man has a really good mace. So I would say do not buy a PvP weapon. It's just way too expensive in terms of arena points. But just try your best to get Torch of Holy Fire. The raids are very easy, but yeah, this item is really contested. Good luck with that. Then we go Deadly Gladiator's Grimoire for the spell penetration. Big spell penetration here. Big spell penetration on the wand. Spell penetration enchant on the cloak. And I go for the Medallion of the Horde. I go for the Flow of Knowledge from Wintergrasp. I think this is the best trinket. I tried a bunch of trinkets. I tried everything. Maybe Battle Masters could be better in 2s exclusively, but in 3s I just like Flow of Knowledge. The trinket proc is actually kind of big. Ideally you do want to track it, and whenever it pops you can just do more burst damage. You can also snapshot as many dots as you can, and also Shadow Fiend. Shadow Fiend snapshots and scales with your spell power, so if you can snap a big Shadow Fiend with this trinket and then get it bloodlusted, that's a lot of damage. Then we have the Band of Channeled Magic. This is the ring you get for Marks of Valor. It's kind of cheap, easy to get. You can also replace this with Hateful Ring. Then we got the Deadly Gladiator's Band of Ascendancy for hit. We get the Deadly Gladiator's Shreds of Salvation for more spirit. Spirit on the legs, spirit on the belt, spirit on the gloves, spirit everywhere, okay? So yeah, I'll have a link to this down in the description. You can go check it out. But again, you can play whatever you want. You can choose to play full Mooncloth like I am and just don't go as fast and be more of a support. You can play full Satin and just go for the big juicy crits and try to one-shot people. Maybe it's better in 5s. I'm actually gonna try, after I get my full Mooncloth, I'm also gonna farm full Satin, and actually try it out with the big crits. I think it's kind of a bait, the big crits, but it's probably fun in BGs when you fight undergeared people. So gear, there you go. I'm gonna also have Kate's document down in the description so you can check out all the other loadouts. Now let's talk a little bit about macros. I have some potentially useful macros for everybody. So first of all, I have this help harm macro that I've been using for a really long time. I use it in retail, I use it in Lich King, and I have it for a bunch of spells. What it does essentially is, I mean, this one does more than just that. This one's also a mouse over. I'll have a link to a bunch of my macros in the description so you can check a lot of them out. I don't know if I'll have all of them because they're like repeating themselves and kind of useless, but the most important ones. So for instance, this one. This is a El Clásico help harm macro that I've been using forever. So what it does is, see my number 2 here, it shows Mind Blast, but it's actually based on what I'm targeting. So if I'm targeting a friendly and then I press 2, it will do a flash heal. And if I target an enemy and I press 2, it will Mind Blast it. Big damage. And also if I press it with Alt, no matter who I target or what I target, if I hold Alt, it will always heal me. And I have the same for Mind Blast and Flash Heal. I have Shadow Word Pain and Power Word Shield on 3. I have Mind Flay and Greater Heal on 4. I have Renew and Devouring Plague on R. They're kind of the same idea. I'll have a link to that if you want to just reduce real estate on keybinds, because you can see everything's keybinded and I'm running out of room. Because you also kind of really want to play with Dispel Party 1 and Dispel Party 2. Those are like very basic macros, so you can dispel your teammates very fast. Your Dispel is kind of like one of your strongest spells as a priest. You have an offensive and a defensive Dispel, and keeping your teammates out of CC, especially in a higher rating when you're about to get cross CC'd. This is really good to be like very fast with Dispels. Dispel 1, Dispel 2. I have Shield Party 1, Shield Party 2. Of course, also Shield myself. I have Palm Party 1, Party 2. I also have my Arena macros, which are Target Arena 1, 2, 3, Focus Arena 1, 2, 3. So if I press the button normally, it targets Arena 1, targets Arena 2, targets Arena 3. If I hold Alt down, it does Focus Arena 1, Focus Arena 2, Focus Arena 3. And if I hold Control, it does Mind Control Arena 1, 2, and 3. And if I hold Shift, I don't think I even have Shift here, but on retail I have Shift, does Silence Arena 1, 2, and 3. Now I don't really use anything other than just Target Focus and sometimes Mind Control, so that's why I don't have the other ones. But you can put whatever you want here, you know, you can put Dispel, you can put the Psychic Horror. For Psychic Horror, for instance, I just have Normal and Focus, and the same with Dispel. I mean, Dispel I have Party 1, Party 2, Self-Dispel. Let me show you. This is my Dispel magic macro. What it does is, if I hold Control down, it will dispel me. If I hold Alt down, it will dispel my focus target. And this is for mouse over, so on the same macro, if I mouse over someone, it's gonna dispel my mouse over. If I hold Control down, it's gonna dispel me. If I hold Alt down, it's gonna dispel my focus. And if none of those are true, it's just gonna dispel whoever I'm targeting. So there's like a lot of dispel macros here, but that's just the name of the game. You know, Shadow Priest is really good at dispelling, so you gotta take advantage of that. Other than dispelling and all these other focus macros that you should probably have, I have a Shadow Fiend macro, courtesy of Josito, Mr. Josito Jones. So this will summon Shadow Fiend if I don't have one. It's gonna put it on aggressive. It's gonna do pet attack, so you can actually swap who your Shadow Fiend is targeting. And it also casts Shadow Crawl on button press. And I also have like in the same macro, if I press the same button with Alt, it will give my pet Fear Ward. And this is against warriors, when usually warriors really like fearing my Shadow Fiend, which is, you know, really annoying for me, but a really good idea for them. So I can also Shadow Fiend, Fear Ward my Shadow Fiend. So when I summon Shadow Fiend, I press it once, Shadow Fiend will go on the target, and make sure you have this Shadow Crawl turned off. By default it's like this, but if you right click, it becomes like this, right? And then I can press it again, and my Shadow Fiend will teleport there, use its ability, and you can use this to like swap targets, because it's very important for your Shadow Fiend to actually attack, and to attack a non-shielded or immune target, because then you get no mana. So very important to actually kind of micromanage your Shadow Fiend a little bit and make sure he stays on target. That's why I have that little shadow step. For instance, a lot of times people will just jump off platforms when I Shadow Fiend, so the Shadow Fiend has to go around the whole thing. But if you're really fast, you know, as soon as they land, you can basically shadow step to them with the Shadow Fiend, and it's the same keybind. So even if they're not kiting it, even if your Shadow Fiend has full uptime, it's still good to Shadow Crawl on cooldown because it makes your Shadow Fiend do a little bit more damage on the next attack. So when I Shadow Fiend, I kind of spam Shadow Fiend button when I want it to do a little extra damage, okay? Oh, one thing to keep in mind, I don't know, probably you guys know this already, but in case you don't know, in Wrath of the Lich King, all spell ranks cost the same amount of mana. So there's no real reason to go to downrank anything for Shadow. You don't get any faster casts, for instance. I know mages get faster cast, but we don't, you know? We have the same cast time for everything, it just does less damage. So just take this button on, I didn't even know it existed until recently. Put this and just put max rank on everything. That's kind of makes things easier, because in TBC I had to have a bunch of low rank spells on my bars and it was really annoying. I think that's it for macros. I don't think I have anything too crazy. It's just focus psychic horror, focus silence, focus dispel, party 1 dispel, party 2 dispel, party 1 shield, party 2 shield, target arena 1 2 3, focus arena 1 2 3. My Shadow Fiend macro is one of the big ones, and all the macros I have, like I said, are just these 2-in-1 kind of macros where I can either flash heal or mind blast. So that's it. Let's now talk about add-ons. I get this question all the time, and I'm probably gonna even make a separate video for this because this is one question I actually get all the time. So everything I'm using for PvP is big debuffs. Big debuffs is this thing when someone has like an important buff, like Power Word Shield for instance, it shows on their frames, and it has priority systems, so a cheap shot would be above, or a Cloak of Shadows, so yeah, you can see big cooldowns easier. Then I have Gladdy. It's kind of like my arena frames UI right there. It's just out of the box, install it, and that's it. I have Omnibar for tracking enemy abilities. I have a bunch of kicks I'm tracking here, and I have a bunch of other abilities I track. I should probably track more than this. Obviously when you play in an arena you're not going to see all of these because you're not fighting every class at the same time, but you know, I can track Repentance, Innervate, Cloak, Shadow Step is very good to track. Things kind of important, you know, so you can just track whatever you want. It's really easy to set up. Out of the box it tracks all the kicks, but you can just make new bars, drag them wherever you want, and you go into spells and you just take whatever you want to track. It's very simple. And then the big one, Weakauras. I have a bunch of Weakauras, okay? And I'm gonna put a link to all of the ones I'm gonna be talking about. These are the big ones that everyone asks me about. So Loss of Control, this is the one that makes, you know, puts this retail-like thing in the middle of my screen so I can actually see what CC I'm in, because I'm kind of old and stupid and it's too hard for me to look up at my debuffs when I get CC'd. So this is Loss of Control alert. It's from TBC, but it still works. I believe there might be a new version out there for Wrath of the Lich King, but I mean, this is fine. I have my cast bar. Cast bar, this is made by Passion, who is one of the big brains in the Shadow Priest Discord. And the reason why I have this is for Mind Flay. This is the big reason. Mind Flay ticks for damage every 33%. So I need to see these lines. See those lines? I want to see those lines for PvE so I know when to stop my Mind Flay after the second tick sometimes when I need to. It's like a PvE thing, but I kind of like it now. I also have this Weakaura here that shows my... Whenever my Inner Fire falls off, I have this thing light up here, because having Inner Fire is kind of important. You want to always have Inner Fire on you. So that's just to like tell me, hey, you better rebuff that right now. And then I have another Weakaura that everybody asks me about, and it shows my debuffs on enemy frames. It's WotLK's Shadow Priest plate debuffs. This is from TBC. I changed it a little bit. I'll have a link to it as well, of course. And I just changed the trigger to be only Shadow Word Pain, Vampiric Touch, Devouring Plague. So it shows these debuffs on the enemy like target frame. It's kind of nice on their HP bar. And then one very strong, extremely good Weakora I have is the PvP totem nameplate icon. This is a Weakora for retail, but apparently it kind of works in Lich King as well. And what it does is it shows an icon of the totems above the totems themselves. It makes it way easier to target. And one thing that I didn't even expect it to do, but it actually does, and it's kind of broken, it shows the ticks of Tremor. So you can fear someone while Tremor is down and then kill Tremor before it ticks. It is super strong. I didn't even know the Weakora has that. I just realized it like a few days ago and I'm like, oh, okay, this is broken. So I'll have a link to that as well. I'm sorry, Shamans. It must be done, okay? You have Wind Shear, you have Grounding, you have Spammable Tremor. It's just too much, okay? It's time for science to fight back. Alright, and that kind of covers all the setting up the Shadow Priest. So we talked about talents, gear, professions, races, all that. Now, how do you actually play the game? What do you do exactly? Well, this is kind of like a hard question to answer because there's so much nuance to it. And Shadow doesn't really have like a rotation set in stone. The class is very flexible and you can do so much with it. It's a very strong support, very good burst damage, very good sustain damage. It gets trained a lot because it's an extremely high priority target. You are so disruptive and so strong with your dispel and damage that you can't really be left alone. Shadow either gets focused down hard or you get CC'd hard. Because usually, especially in 3s and also in 2s, you usually play with things that can't dispel. So it falls onto you to be the designated dispeller. And a lot of mage teams, red paladin teams, hunter teams, they're going to want to, and warlock teams as well, they're going to want to lock you down with crowd control since no one else can dispel it. And it's really important to play safe against that as to not get CC'd and stay CC'd for the whole game. And at the same time, you also have to play offensive because if you're getting CC'd, then someone else is getting trained. So I'm gonna hop in game and give you a couple of random tips I have, but it's kind of a loaded question, you know, like how do you play? Just play a lot and it's gonna come to you. But here's a couple of tips, okay? So first of all, I've noticed that it feels a lot better and it's way better to play offensive on the enemy healer. That's because of Fear being such an insanely short cooldown. Coming from retail, it took me a long time to wrap my head around Psychic Scream being 23-second cooldown. I press it and I feel like I instantly have it back. So playing on top of enemy healers feels really good. In both 3s and 2s. Strategy is a little different based on what you're playing, especially 2s or 3s. The best comps are obviously playing with a mage or a rogue in 2s, and mage, rogue, and probably Resto Shaman, or maybe even Holy Paladin in 3s. I'm playing with the Boomkin. It's not exactly the best, but at least we have some decent off heals. Vampiric Touch is obviously high priority in terms of damage. Also, I don't know if you guys knew this, but whenever Vampiric Touch gets dispelled, it's not the healer, the guy dispelling, that takes the damage. It's actually the person that VT was on that takes the damage. So if I'm a healer and I dispel this guy's VT, he's the one that takes damage. And VT dispel can hit pretty hard. It hits for like 5 to 6k. So VT is high priority. However, it's a cast. You don't want to get kicked necessarily. And what I usually do is when the game starts, I just put Shadowward Pain on, you know, all the targets. Devouring Plague on my main target, and you start dispelling and shielding, especially dispelling. Just get everyone naked, clean. See, my Shadowward Pain's about to end. I press Mind Flay to restore it back. Cheap redotting. You don't have to waste the full mana of a Shadowward Pain. Shadowward Pain is really expensive in mana. It's 700 mana, whereas Mind Flay is 300 mana. So if you can do this and just, you know, sometimes it just falls off before it's supposed to, but hey, it is what it is. Ideally, when you burst someone down, you want to have all your dots on them, of course. Now I got both my procs up, which is kind of nice, so I could do big damage here. And the big combo is, you know, you can silence someone and do Mind Blast into Death into Rocket, and that's a lot of damage. Of course, nothing crits because I have very low crit chance. Another way to burst is you can Shadow Fiend. And when you Shadow Fiend, if your Shadow Fiend has like good uptime, it will give you a lot of mana. And what you can do is you can just spam Devouring Plague. Like with all the dots ticking, Shadow Fiend ticking, and Devouring Plague spam, this is really hard to heal. But yeah, if you don't have Shadow Fiend, if you're doing it on your own, it's still good to try to like snipe people that are low, kill them with Shadow with Devouring Plague. But you will go fast if you do this, so only do this if you're like almost guaranteed to get a kill. Other than that, ideally you want to keep all your dots. Make sure you Mind Flay to reapply Shadow Word Pain. Mind Blast, Shadow Word Death Rocket is big combo, big damage. Play offensive, play on the enemy healers ideally. You can get to them by, you know, fading to break snares, and you can fear them. And out of a fear, you can set up with a big VT and big wombo combo. Mind Blast Death, boom. Nothing crits again, unlucky, it is what it is. It's still big damage. I'm gonna say Psychic Horror, from my personal experience, it feels a lot better to press it offensively when you're trying to score a kill rather than just save it. But it does depend on what you're fighting. If you're fighting a sub-rogue, maybe it's better to actually save it for Shadow Dance defensively, because Shadow Dance is just so strong right now. Against a warrior, for instance, it is really nice to stop Blade Storm, but a lot of times I feel like it's just better to be offensive, so I prefer using it offensively when I'm trying to kill the warrior, you know. So in the start of the game, if we get them in a good spot and I have like all my dots and they're clean and this is their paladin, I can, you know, disarm Sans Paladin and go for a big try to kill in the start. I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, so maybe you guys can correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure warriors cannot use retaliation or shield wall if they're disarmed. So that's kind of a big thing. You can kind of kill them in the opener, but it is a little risky because if your Psychic Horror is down, they're gonna Blade Storm you. Blade Storm is not insanely crazy right now, but later in the seasons it's gonna it's gonna do a lot of damage. One thing you can try to keep in mind is try to always Mind Blast on a target that has VT to apply your mana regen for the whole party. Replenishment is really bad. It doesn't give you a lot of mana at all, but over the course of a long game on everyone in your team, it's nice to have. So yeah, if you can, just try to Mind Blast you know, targets that have Vampiric Touch Up for this replenishment. One more thing I want to say is, and I saw this in a comment and I would have never thought to actually add it in a guide, but I think it's actually good to know in case you didn't know. Dispersion doesn't dismount you, and it's basically just an aura on you, so you can even mount up in Dispersion. So into some teams, for instance, I think into Beast Cleave, when they connect to you and try to blow you up instantly, sometimes what we were doing last night was I was just playing around the pillar, and as soon as I can't escape them anymore, they're on top of me, I just disperse on my mount. You can't get slowed, and I just cross the map. Like this is my gameplay. I just run. And eventually they still catch up and you can still die, but against a Beast Cleave with, you know, wolves and Bestial Rat and Bloodlust, you can't really do anything, you know, in the start. So just in case you didn't know, you can disperse in your mount. There you go. Big pro tips. You can silence DKs. A DK, when it's silenced, they can't use a lot of their self-healing. They can only Death Strike, but they can't kick you, they can't AMS. I believe they can't Ghoul Sack either. So it's like if you get a DK low and they have AMS, you can kind of silence them and finish them off if they're being greedy. When you're fighting DKs, it's kind of nice to keep Abolish Disease up. It kind of screws them up a little bit. Keep Renew up, Shield on cooldown, Palm on cooldown. Try to Shackle Gargoyle. As long as you don't go you shouldn't die to a DK until your mana bar is completely dead, unless the Gargoyle is free casting on you. But even then, it's a little difficult with all the micro CCs they have. But yeah, you can like cast VT, you know, fake their kicks, and then just spam Flash Heal with all your buffs up. Abolish Disease, Shield, Renew, Palm on cooldown, and you shouldn't die. And if you're scared of casting Flash Heal, just spam Holy Nova. Holy Nova is actually pretty good HPS. It's good healing. So just spam this, try to get away. You can actually dispel Chains of Ice or press Fade to get out. However, keep in mind, Fade only breaks slows when you're in shadow form. So if you're casting heals and you press Fade to get out, it's not gonna work. Just don't press Fade when you're not in shadow form. In Lich King, Shadow is so... you have so many tools and you can play in so many ways that it's really difficult for me to tell you how you should be playing it. It's basically, it kind of revolves around your fear. That's how I feel it. Every time you have fear, you can do a big setup. Ideally, you want to keep everyone dispelled, your team clean, your team alive, and just ideally you want to have your main target at least with these two dots on, You know, keep Shadow Word Pain with this, keep Mind Blasting into Vampiric Touch if you can, and every time you have a fear, that's why it's important to stay as close as you can on the enemy healer, like kind of the whole game. And whenever you land a fear, I kind of like to kill healers. I feel like Shadow is really good at killing healers, and the way to do that is to just, you know, out of the fear, you stun them, and you can do Mind Blast into Devouring Plague, into Silence, in Shadow Word Death, and then you can spam Devouring Plague. And I guess that's kind of everything I wanted to talk about. I suppose as far as comps go, like I said, and you guys know this, rogues and mages, they're the protagonists of every expansion. Shadow Priest is a very strong sidekick. But yeah, ideally you want to play with a mage. I think Mage SP is the best SP comp for 2s. SP Rogue is also very good. Other than that, SP DK works, SP Ellie is probably fine, SP Feral I think is fine. SP kind of works with, I think, every other DPS. It's kind of like retail a little bit, because you are essentially a very good support class. You can do good damage as well, but Rogue and Mage definitely your bread and butter. As far as 3s goes, you kind of want to have a Shaman in your team. And that's it. That's the guide. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys enjoyed. I want to say one last time, if you're trying to like brainstorm and come up with the best, you know, loadout, crazy MP5 or something, join the Discord. There's a lot of like-minded people, a lot of science going on. You can even find stuff, I mean, you find a lot of stuff for PvE, a lot of stuff for PvP. You can find partners to play with, streams. I recommend Mr. Josito Jones. He plays a little bit of everything, but he's a, you know, multi-rank 1 Shadow Priest, the Galaxy Brain. I stream myself every once in a while. You know, I try to stream every day, twitch.tv/anboniwow. Come say hi. And that's it. That's the guide. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video or on stream. Peace.